Hello, everyone.
Hey, good
Well,
to be back.
good to be back today for this next podcast. Um, and actually, I'll adjust the camera here. That's a bit better, isn't it? Go back a little bit just to be on the camera fully. Maybe that's better. Yeah, so today I wanted to, I'm going to take it a bit slower. And it's very important because I think this will be a very good moment for us to share with you some of the things we've really been working with and have been struggling with, as always, like an authentic podcast, an authentic bringing to you
Mhm.
of some of the struggles that we're really working with now. So the theme, the topic, let's say theme, the topic for today is persistence, willpower, and not really giving a shit, basically. And that's how I'm going to summarize it. And the reason for that is because I want to be a little bit more direct, and I want to encourage Marlou in this podcast to also show some of her directness, because some of the struggles that we've been having with every time that comes up after doing a podcast is that we're very critical, basically, very
Mhm.
critical of what we say,
Yeah.
how we say it, what we do, what we bring. Is it going to be good? Is it not going to be good? And this is the problem in life for everyone, anyone, is that these thoughts, feelings, and I know it's somewhat cliche, but that's why it's interesting to speak about this,
Mm.
is that those things hold you back if you have an agenda for what it's supposed to be or look like.
Yeah.
And the power and strength and persistence and willpower and determination and not giving a shit that I was mentioning lies in making the decision
Mhm.
to do it anyway.
Mhm.
And that's sometimes obviously the hardest thing for us to do, is to do it anyway, which is why I'm kind of, that's actually the last podcast we did was on the same day as today. So because of those feelings, I decided to say, and we'd end up decided to say, we're going to do another podcast just for the reason that we can, not for the reason of any specific purpose or meaning, but just for the reason that we can. So this is the introduction for this session, and now I'll leave it over to
Mhm.
Marlou. So,
When you say that, just because it can, it just
mm,
brings up in my system like all these kind of feelings, like
mm,
ickiness, like
ickiness, yeah.
um, what does it mean, and
Mm,
what is it that I um, want to bring across? Does it even has any impacts?
mm-hmm,
Does it even bother? Does
mm-hmm,
it even make sense?
mm-hmm,
Is anyone even going to get it,
mm-hmm,
or really
mm-hmm,
get what I'm saying or what we're
mm-hmm.
speaking about?
Yeah.
Like these judgments, and also like these um, I don't know. I I certainly have these sabotaging feelings, or like I I think it's more like an identity.
Mm-hmm.
That's like wanting to hold myself in the same place where I am.
So with identity, for those of you
Mhm.
listening, that basically means it's become a part of you
Yeah,
as if it's
it's
normal.
like an image. It's like there's somewhere in my subconscious, there's an image of myself, somewhere stored, and it really wants to be kept alive.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm going to do something different,
Mm-hmm.
or um, what you're saying, like showing up for just the, the sake of it, being able to um, express myself,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like okay, it's,
Well,
yeah, there is this image that's like, okay, but what about me?
yes, yeah, yeah,
It's like, what about this thing you've always cherished that was never good enough to be seen,
yeah,
for example?
yes.
And um,
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. We're going to make it a
that's
little bit
I
interactive.
can feel it in my if I'm speaking out, I feel it's true for me. You know, it's like, what about all these like these I don't know, like something different has to have happened for me to for me to show up, you know, instead of like doing it now, like why hasn't it happened like before? Or you know, there are those parts in me, what we talked about in the previous podcast, that haven't been acknowledged, that are like coming up or brought to the light, I guess. Like yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. Yeah. So take a moment, take a breath. We're going to make this a little bit more interactive, just because this will help you, and it will help us, and it will help the podcaster, the listener, the viewer, those of you listening. So I'm going to help you out a little bit, and we're going to change the dynamic in the moment, as we shared in the last podcast, which, like Marlou said, was about acknowledgement and about becoming aware of the things that are happening in the present moment that you name in order to make the dynamic shift. Yeah. So one of the things that you are in when this happens for you is a lot of self-doubt. It's paralyzing self-doubt. Yeah. And that comes from, at least from my perspective, I'm just tuning into the space. That happens even when you share and show up in the podcast, which is now an official setting where people are listening, is that you have not been acknowledged in that young, very fragile, very vulnerable part of you that wasn't allowed to express itself and was blocked off by a controlling kind of dynamic, probably with your father, and it prevented you from being able to express yourself freely, which contracted your system, and then it becomes a fight in order to show up, and that becomes so unstable that you doubt yourself, and then it paralyzes you further, and the whole thing keeps going.
I feel it.
And that's what
alive
happened
here.
Yeah.
So
just naming that.
Make me aware of that dynamic. And
what happens now? What happens now? And also for you listening, what happens now? Does it change the dynamic a bit? Does it bring more ease? Yeah. So that settles the space, because otherwise, and this is also again a part of what we want to share, and I have many of these parts too, but it brings through the frequencies, the everything is a frequency, right? Everything, all states, emotions, feelings, it's all, let's say, a resonance, it's all a frequency. It comes through anyway into the space, and it creates instability, even between us, even on the podcast, even with you, even with what we're thinking that we're doing when we're bringing it to you, without knowing who will actually listen to it or when. It still brings through that frequency. And so the more you name these dynamics specifically, the more everything can come into balance. And this is exactly, just for a moment, coming back to the reason for this podcast, is when you do things anyway, despite the fact that all of those dynamics, one of them being what I just named, trying to hijack you away from taking those steps, when you do it anyway, that's where the power lies. Because many of us will have been in some form, when you're sensitive, you're on this journey, you realize that you're not happy in life, you're needing to go within, mature certain parts, grow spiritually, heal. You will have had a life of certain forms of neglect, abuse, trauma, rejection, non-acknowledgement, not being seen, not being heard, not being felt, not being supported, etc. One of those is going to definitely apply to you. And as a result, if that really impacted you severely, those mechanisms are going to block and sabotage you from taking action or taking any steps. And the more time you need in order to grow within, the more these controlling forces paradoxically also actually control your space. And the more you need to not give a shit, which is why I named that title for this podcast, right? to do it anyway,
Yeah.
because that's where the power lies to claim it back. And this is
Yeah.
often the missing ingredient for people that have been so traumatized, as, for
Yeah.
example, I've had with Marlou as well, with her dynamic that she shared, which is so vulnerable to share and show up with, right? So that's the piece I wanted to share there.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that was a lot, so now throwing it back the plate on to Marlou to share, but just to give some space to let that dynamic, like,
I
we're
think,
all growing and learning here,
yeah, and I think our nervous system is not really needs to like readjust.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
my nervous system has to like um, be rebuilt in a
Mm-hmm.
more in a way in a more positive way that I can see myself. And
More positive self-image.
yeah, to rebuild and
Yeah.
and build back positive self-image, and that's like um, being seen or showing up feels like very like for me it feels like scratching my nails on a
On a
blackboard.
chalkboard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like opening up. My system feels
Yeah.
like the same way,
Yeah.
and it feels like really like, oh, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to show up.
Yeah. So it's very
Why would
brave
I
of
do
you.
it?
It's very brave
I'm
of you
gonna
that you do.
totally hate everything, and
Yeah.
and kind of like, oh, I just that's all. It's like that's what
Mm.
my nervous system is like
Mm.
throwing out. It's like, okay, it's coming out, but it's shifting also because I'm like, it sometimes it feels like shitty,
Mm.
you know, in
Mm.
opening up and transforming those energies that are like always like been
Well,
suppressed.
I'll tell you something extra here.
Okay.
Also, in the context again of this discussion, take it not in a sense that I'm helping you therapeutically, but just in the context of bringing dynamics that are useful for all of us
Yeah.
watching and learning. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you are a reflection with that feeling so strongly, that sensitivity to showing up of the collective feminine in all of us that has still a difficulty with vulnerability, of being authentic and fragile, as I mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
to show up with something that you're speaking as your truth,
Mm-hmm.
without knowing how it will be received, literally, because we're speaking to a camera now, so we don't know
Mm-hmm.
how it will be received, what will happen with it, what will be used, what will be internet and safety, how people will react to it, what will happen, what will I feel, what will others feel, and all the things that you're worried about, which is a sign of a lot of courage in order to do it anyway, because that progresses not only you, not only us, not only this, not only you guys listening, but everything on the collective level, because we're all connected to each other anyway. So we're doing it together, but we're all carrying our own pieces. So that's one thing that I'm picking up here as we're talking about it, that we can share, which is and I have my pieces too. We can, often one of my shadows is that I like to be able to, I can communicate things very well, I can express them very well, and I don't have a difficulty sharing them,
Mm-hmm.
which becomes a way of hiding my vulnerability in other forms.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, what am I trying to say here? So I have my own difficulties in being actually seen underneath the identity of having it all together on the outside towards other people in communication. So that's a vulnerability for me that we're probably still going to get to somewhere along these podcasts. But just to mention that it's not just all one-sided here that I'm saying about Morlou, but it's so, again, it reinforces the importance of doing it anyway, is really the key here, is really the core concept, is doing it anyway, just like Marlou's doing it, just like we're doing it, because yeah, it's not about perfection, it's about the decisions that you make to do things that are out of your comfort zone, but that are needed because your journey feels like it's part of what you want to bring out in order to take any step. That's often the bottom line for many people. And and when you have almost like literally, like we have like nothing left to lose because your life is doesn't matter, then you can drop all attachments, which we will talk about in another podcast. But and those attachments, when you drop those attachments, then which is literally the state I'm in, which is the only reason why I started doing this podcast, because I literally, at some level, don't care anymore. It's not that I don't care, it's just that I don't have an attachment.
You have to explain that a bit more.
I have to explain that a bit more. Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't have a need to prove myself, or I don't have a need to, and maybe it comes up, but the point is that I don't feel like I'm doing it from a place.
This is more your nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
with some of those voices that like are stuck, you know, and needs to like get out. So go ahead.
Okay, so Marlou's here helping me out here, but it's the okay, so it's the feeling of it's that I don't want to.
You've also not been seen in a way. Yeah.
So okay, so let's
I
talk about
sense
that.
Because
Sure,
that's more the voice of like, I have nothing left to lose. But there's more like a very like voice that wants to be seen, you know, that has the like, you know, there's a very positive thing underneath in your essence, like you want
Okay.
to show yourself.
I see what you're saying.
You know, you have to like dig it up a bit.
So okay, let me rephrase it then. Let me say that it's the podcast for me was coming from a place where I didn't feel like I had anything more to lose in a negative sense, so that I could finally access the deeper underlying feeling of wanting to be seen in a positive sense that could finally begin to take small steps of showing up. Yeah. And that's a good place of not being attached, because it means that, okay, it's like literally like, could it get any worse? No. So then what do you have to lose? Like I said, so might as well show up. And it's
like a new era for you.
It's a new era. So let's keep it at that for now. But anyway, yeah. So but that's a vulnerable piece. Yeah. And Marlou pointed it out, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have pointed it out about myself. But the point is that, yeah, so these are the pieces that we're showing up with, but that is the basis of what you want to show up with, because otherwise, honestly, a lot of stuff out there may look good, but if it's not authentic, it's starting to get really cringy everywhere.
Yeah, you are distracted so easily. I mean, you can like click away and delete and go on Facebook and look at some funny videos and then but after a while, I don't know, you know,
it just loses its realness because it's not real.
It's about you and what is, you know, what is in you that needs to be seen or expressed, or you know, you can get some help with that make you feel better in a way that like social media can't, you know. And this is like the path we're taking, and it's not easy, it's not always fun.
Not easy is a major understatement, because it's like,
and I'm
extremely difficult.
I'm very happy to have some friends like Lionel here to help me through whenever I get stuck and or lose faith, you know, and but it goes like the ladder is like going slowly up, and it feels very good.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. It's beautiful. And I hope that for those of you taking all of this in, that this is a useful example, because we can always be examples, right? We can be role models for each other, of so much more. Like, it doesn't have to be impressive. It can just be something very simple, like we're having a conversation now, which is very simple. But if it's really real, it brings across a lot of value. And if we all, and that this is, and I notice it more and more, it's cliche, but it's like in the world of today with all the technology and social media and stuff, we're watering down all the essence of realness, and it all becomes very synthetic. We enter very synthetic realities with bubbles of illusionary fake realities that have become so far advanced and developed in our daily lives that it becomes almost like a real, it's a reality. It's like a technological sub-reality, and it's just
the
not real anymore.
illusion. There's a lot of illusions out there.
It's quite scary.
That like give you this pretty picture on social media, like, oh, this is how life has to be. But when you're looking out of the window, it's just gray and raining, you know.
Yeah, it's exactly the opposite.
And you have to deal with that.
Yeah.
And you have to like really you know, feel that internal the beauty of the essence of you, and you know, it's more, the worth is more in that than in all the illusion and the distraction and the pretty pictures and the.
So I think what we're going to do is we're going to make this podcast really horrible, and we're going to make the lighting worse probably, which is not difficult to do.
Yeah.
And we're going
less
makeup, yeah, and wear shabby clothes and really be like homeless bums and everything. But then at least it's going to be so real that we're going to transmit a lot of value to you, and you better be watching, you know, because we don't want to fake it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but it's a joke, but that's obviously what it gets down to. But this is what, and this is the inverting everything. It's inverting, like, what humanity really needs is more of that, because honestly, it would be more real.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, the world is in a very bad state for the most part, you know. So if people would be more real about that, we would actually be able to grow through it into a better place. But if we're hiding it and camouflaging it, just like in essence with makeup, all the technology and all the stuff that we're doing in the world of social media is all putting makeup on everything. You know, like putting lipstick on a pig, it's not going to make anything better. And this is the place we're at now. And this is one of those moments where we need to acknowledge that. Even if I just acknowledge it now for the collective, but acknowledging that and then begin there. And that is going to really suck sometimes, most of the time, probably. But if you do it anyway, that's a beautiful thing that becomes authentic again, because you acknowledge the truth in the present moment, which is always what everything comes down to, acknowledging the truth in the present moment. Then you can change and use everything to your advantage to grow through that. And it becomes, you build depth, you build beauty, you build character, you build realness. And honestly, I've not done that nearly enough. I've been in pain, in suffering, out of alignment, in resistance, in fear, in doubt, and all kinds of other stuff, not showing up, with transforming and recycling all of that. Also, I wasn't ready, but at the same time, not able to use that to make something out of it that can help and benefit others. Just literally, I see it as recycling, where you recycle let's use all of that energy that's there anyway, that we can't get rid of, that doesn't change. That's anyway the truth of it all. But then use it to just build something, recreate something that others can value from, and that I can show up with, so that I can be seen. That is win-win. And that's, in essence, also what we're doing here with the podcast, at least today.
Beautiful set.
Yeah.
Well said.
So you feel a lot better? Notice the brightness coming through from Marlou more?
I feel more stable, more like empowered. Yeah.
And that's a beautiful on-camera example of what we said in the last podcast. Listen to that one if you haven't listened to it yet. On the awarenesses and making changes, growth and expansion in the moment, where you just name those things that we just did, that shifts everything. And notice like the brightness coming back. And that's this, again, it's so, I can't state this enough, how important it is to go to those. It requires the combination that we shared in that podcast of going to those levels, going through those steps and those ladders, and then using all of that focused power. In my case, it's maybe a bit more specific, but you can grow in that area too.
Mhm.
And then be more specific on what's actually going on that you need your attention and your focus in order to bring that lightness and that brightness and that divine energy through,
And
so
you
that
can
it can
start,
open up.
and you can start anywhere, you know.
Yeah.
It's like every little step is like very big, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't have to like, don't overthink that it's nothing.
Yeah,
you
that's a
know?
good point, because
Falling
often
in a
these are
work,
subtle intuitions, and then you
it's
think,
very
oh, this is
subtle
maybe
and it's
nothing.
very like poof, it's out of the way
Yeah.
by, you know, it's like using it and inviting, yeah, more truth.
More truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I like it. So I think for today, this feels like almost rounded up. We've done quite a lot today. I feel very happy on this even second podcast today. Um, and we'll think of something else to share next time. There's plenty of topics that we can share more on, but we want to keep it really real to the present moment and use everything we can to recycle it into something really positive and good.
Yeah.
Because if you master that, you can master your life essentially, and that's just beautiful. And then we can all make a better life and a better world out of this place. And I think that's my contribution for today. And I think Marlou contributed a lot with all her pain. But all jokes aside, and just the transformation of that, just really beautiful, and also showing up and sharing. And you were so clear, so it was just really nice to speak with you today, Marlou, about all these things. And it brings a really nurturing feminine essence. And I kind of really see your sweater now as that color of purple, really bringing in, that's the color of that third eye, right? It's that intuitive color, which is really coming through for me, through the wisdom through which you share. And so that's very nice to always, you appreciate, being able to share this together. So I hope you guys enjoyed that too.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Have a good day. Speak to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.